When I was a kid, my dad used to call me Smiley, which is a pretty self-explanatory nickname. Life was a lot simpler back then. I woke up, went to elementary school, came home, and played football with my neighbors. What made me happy wasn't complicated then, and it shouldn't be now. Going to the gym, hanging out with my family and friends, watching basketball. Those are all things that make me happy. And recently, work has been something that I've thought more about. Work is a big part of my day, and likely yours too. So why don't we look at work the same way as the other things we spend our time on? Think about what makes you happy. What gets you excited to start your day? Do you wake up and say, I'm ready to go to work? Would you say that your environment is conducive of your happiness? Because it should be. When you whittle it all the way down, most people just want to be happy, to feel fulfilled. And yet we discount how we feel when we're at work, despite spending 8, 10, 12 hours a day working. Work is something we see as a chore in exchange for money, or as an opportunity to grow our careers. But just because that's how you see it now, doesn't mean you can't also enjoy it. What does an environment of enjoyment and passion look like for you? Maybe it's living in a house with 30 of your closest friends during college, where there's always someone to watch Game of Thrones with, or walk to 7-Eleven. Or maybe it's when you got to share something you really cared about with your closest friends, and they cheered you on and supported your passion. That is the environment I believe work should be, where you feel happy, feel engaged, feel fulfilled. Because not only is the work that you're doing important, but so are those meaningful relationships that you're creating. The hallway conversations and hearing about people's lives are what make those relationships so impactful. One impactful environment for me was at my university. I graduated in May of 2020. Now I know you might be doing a little bit of math on that date. So I'll just say it. I graduated just as the pandemic was starting, and I missed out on some of my senior year experiences. But let me tell you about one thing I did get to do when I was at college. I started something called Humans of Stevens. If you've heard of Humans of New York, it was kind of like that. I created an Instagram page, and I would interview people and take their picture. The interviews would be about something that made them happy, or sad, or nervous. There was one interview in particular that stuck out to me because it changed how I thought about the culture of everything that I do. Sitting in the back room of the library, someone shared with me something she hadn't shared with anyone in her life. She shared that she had bipolar disorder. She had battled with mental health since she was 13. She knew the stigma around mental health, and that had kept her from sharing before. But she knew the impact she could have on the culture of openness at Stevens by sharing her story. And she chose to share that story with me and everyone else who read the page. And that's when I realized that this was more than just a project on my school's campus, but an opportunity to change the culture. And you could do that by being a little bit more of yourself. That was a lesson I was hoping to take with me when I started at J&J in June of 2020. But as you could guess, I spent the first year and a half of my time here working completely virtual, living in an apartment with no roommates, where my only real life interactions were those head nods to the other people walking down the street. Yeah, I saw my teammates on calls, but there was still a stark feeling of disconnection. I'm someone who really values that small chit chat in the hallway, and I was completely missing it. For some of you, virtual working may not have been your first job post-graduation or your first job at J&J, but maybe you started a new role or someone new joined your team, and there was an opportunity that was missed. Not being able to just take 30 seconds to talk about the results of a meeting or what your weekend plans are, Doesn't seem like much now, but it means a lot when you can't have that conversation at all. A survey was conducted in 2021 that found that 57% of people who said they had a best friend at work found work more enjoyable. Another study conducted found that women who strongly agree they had a best friend at work were more than twice as likely to find work engaging as those without. Other studies found that people who say they have a best friend at work find it that they're more creative and more productive. I'm not telling you all this because you need to do your job better. I'm telling you this because you should enjoy your job and really want to be there. Have you ever found something in common with people that you didn't expect? For me, when I started my first role, I found out 2 people on my team had Nintendo Switches. One conversation led us to talking about Animal Crossing. We talked about how far along we were in the game and what our goals for the future were. My manager talked about the holiday themed events, and we talked about how we'd have to see each other's islands. Looking back, it seems pretty silly, but to be able to talk about a video game made everything feel a little less high pressure at the time. Animal Crossing aside, work was still something I was really unsure of. Yeah, I enjoyed my work, but it didn't make me feel happy. And so I set off on a journey to get to a place where I did feel happy. Fortunately, coincidence pushed me into the next step along that journey. About a year ago, I joined a new team, and I took that as an opportunity to really embrace the topic of this talk. I got to bring up Movember to the culture team within my org. And I'm happy to share that we created a team that raised money and hosted events that raised awareness around the problems that plague men's health. I also really got to embrace those in-person conversations, whether it be sharing cupcakes for someone's birthday or talking about fantasy football between meetings. I also got to take 2 things I really enjoy: eating and hearing about people's lives, and put them together. I try to schedule one-on-ones with people over lunch, because when you're chowing down, everything is a little less formal. And asking what someone's favorite food is a great conversation starter. I've also taken that humans of Stevens concept into my own life, where people in my life can now share stories that they have. How can you create that environment of happiness for yourself? I'd start by thinking about what made you happy about your other environments, whether it was at school or with your friends or on vacation with your family. Now is as great a time as ever to tell the people you work with what makes you happy, and let them share what makes them happy too. Maybe you're both Philadelphia 76ers fans, or maybe you're both from Freehold, New Jersey. But you'll never create that environment if you don't start that conversation. Work is a big part of your everyday life, so make a change. Think about how excited you'd be to go to work with a team full of your best friends. Why wait? Just think about it. You can always start that conversation by telling someone about a talk you heard at the LDP Summit.